emotional level, that could be part of the problem.
That's true. I would say that when I was doing this research, I did find a few accounts from Hindus that were humanizing and personal accounts, but they're actually all from Bangladesh. They were accounts of Hindus being, yes, so the vision is always like, oh, it has to be majority violence against a minority, and that's always a problem, and it's never a problem if it happens the other way around, and we don't understand that like in certain parts of India, Muslims are actually a majority in like this town or that town, right? So that's a huge discrepancy. Okay, just to bring this conversation full circle, Vamsi Jewelry is arguing that no Hindu victim of violence by Islamic extremists, either in Kashmir, that was the Pulwama attack that happened, or in Mumbai, which is the 26/11 attack, has ever been afforded representation as an individual, as a voice, as a human being in Western news media. And I think he's specifically talking about India. And one of the examples he mentions is Godhra. So if you think about the fact that like the 57 people were burned in the train, like their lives are in a sense like devalued compared to the lives of Muslim people that were lost in the riots. Like the coverage should be commensurate, right? Like when the train burning happened and there weren't riots before, there should have still been some interviews with the people who were affected by that. Like if we're saying that was a human tragedy and any loss of life is a human tragedy, but that didn't happen. So similarly, we can think about how there's an asymmetry in the way that African American victims actually get a worse coverage in the media than white criminals sometimes, right? So when there's a white mass shooter at a particular thing, like at Las Vegas it happened, at the Charleston church it happened, those people are often humanized. You'll have an interview with the shooter's mother and she'll say like, oh, I didn't know that he was going through all this, he had mental health issues, etc., etc. But the African American community, the victims are almost never given the same coverage in the media, right? So this is another example of how that asymmetry can create a bias, an implicit bias in all of our minds that then carries over in how we interact with people outside of the context of news. Okay? So third question, are there double standards? And I think we can all answer that yes, there are at this point. So is similar content for other communities dealt with differently? And within the same story are opposing viewpoints, labeled in different ways so as to skew the reader's perception. So, in other words, when you provide the views of community A and community B, or side A and side B where they disagree, are you labeling side B differently and undermining the opinion of side B within the piece itself? So this often happens with Hindu people being quoted. And I didn't actually provide examples of that. But yeah, go ahead.
An example was from the way I presented LGBTQ issues earlier this morning, where I said, oh, this is what the Dharma Shastra says, but, it's not really what's practiced. So, like, I kind of did that myself.
Yeah, so I think, so like that's very true. And I think that's something that we also have to do ourselves. So let's look at a few examples. So I'm just going to go through this quickly because I think we all understand this. But let's look at some examples. So this is from the Quint. This is from their Twitter feed. So on the left-hand side, you see how the Quint deals with fasting during Navratri. And it says, this Navratri, know how fasting affects your body and whether it's healthy or not. And on the right-hand side, it says, the physical effects of fasting are quite prominent. In fact, science suggests that we make fasting a part of our daily lives. So here, when Ramadan happens, fasting is good. And when Navratri happens, it's at best ambiguous, and I would argue that the framing of this suggests that it's bad. Right? So it can't be the case that fasting is good when it's Ramadan and fasting is bad when it's Navratri. That's not possible. Right?
Like looking at the picture itself, like they're making it religious, be like that's good. But then here they have question marks.
Yeah. That's very true. It's very true.
Right there. So
that's very true. I did not catch on that.
Where's Durga? Picture of Durga. Where's that?
The picture itself, like it's very benign on the right, very benevolent. Looking for forgiveness, looking for this. The other guy is like an urban guy who's a glutton. And questioning, am I really doing the right thing by fasting?
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, Christine.
It's like they're trying to find somebody to pick on, is because they know that, Muslims are more likely to defend themselves if something bad was say. Like, we haven't been out much trying to defend ourselves. So it's like, you pick on the weakest link. That's really what it looks like.
Yeah.
What is the Quint?
It's actually the Indian like associate of Bloomberg.
What?
Yeah.
Quint. Is there a leaning in by Indian?
It's liberal. It leans liberal. They do include some conservative viewpoints, but overwhelmingly, like, if anybody wants to see what like the Quint's editorial stand is, you can watch the Quint's interview of Rahul Gandhi and you'll understand what the editorial stance is like. Okay? So, yeah, okay, I'm not going to get into it. Okay, here's another example. So this is Holi versus Eid. So, tweet number 1 on the left, Hinduism. Answer now. Should we allow kids to unleash terror on the streets in the name of Holi?
Who's going to say yes? The Quint. Yes.
This is a poll. This is a poll that they took on their website. Is Holi kids and water balloons? Water balloons, are they innocent fun or is it harassment? Right? On the other hand, this Eid, a video is helping people mend broken relationships. So Eid is an opportunity for people to come together and mend broken relationships, which sure, it can be, right? People have dinner together, right? At the iftars, right? So yeah, sure. But what about Holi? The whole point of Holi is that everybody's coming together, right? Everybody, sab gile shikwe mit jate hain, we say, right? Everybody, like any attachment or any enmity that you have with somebody else goes away in Holi. That's the whole point of the festival. Yeah.
In that way, the biggest festival for mending people together and like mending broken relationship is the Ganesh Chaturthi in India, which happens in like in Maharashtra specifically, where you're from any caste, any creed, you come together, celebrate Ganesh Chaturthi for 11 days and bid farewell to Bhagwan Ganesha for a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like subtly done.
Yeah. It's subtle.
Very, very
Unless you're looking.
If we don't protest, it goes into the grass level and.
So yeah, go ahead, Riddhi.
So the game that I see that they're playing is the word game. Like if you see those are like a good words, like here they're using like extremes on the negative side, which harassment, like terror, that's like extremes on everything. Whenever we think about like harassment or terror, there's always a negativity connected to it. So indirectly it's just like words that they're choosing.
Yeah, Avi, you had your hand raised. And then we have to move on again, sorry.
The question just comes up in like, what do you mean by we?
Yeah. What right do you have to allow anybody else to celebrate their festival? Exactly. Very good point. Yeah, very, very position of privilege argument. Okay. Number 4 is coverage on a variety of different topics, right? So one thing is that you can have biased coverage on a particular issue about Hinduism or about any other topic, but you can still provide a variety of different perspectives, right? Because covering a single issue that's related to a religion, even if you cover it in different ways, would lead to a bias. And if you, in particular, were to repeatedly only focus on one particular aspect of a community, then it would create implicit bias and implicit association of that community with that phenomenon, right? So imagine if the only coverage of Muslims in Western media was about attacks of terror that happen, right? Then we would have an implicit association of Muslims with terrorism, which would be very harmful to the community, right? So let's look at some examples of the way that Hinduism is treated in a wide array of different publications in the US. So the first one is the New Yorker. So these are all the stories in the New Yorker that were published about Hinduism in the past 1 year. So these 9 stories. So an Indian political theorist on the triumph of Narendra Modi's Hindu nationalism, the violent toll of Hindu nationalism, the year of love jihad in India. There's one article that deals with Hindu candidates in Congress. Then we go to what does Tulsi Gabbard believe? Who is she? What does she believe? Why the war for Kashmir burns on. War for Kashmir. Interesting. This is interesting. After the Easter bombing, Sri Lanka grapples with its history of violence. Why is Hinduism mentioned in the context of an Easter bombing when the terrorists were not Hindus? Right? Why is that happening? Akram Khan remakes Jaza. I have no idea what this article is about. And then the last one is India's historic gay rights ruling and the slow march of progress. I have no idea how Hinduism is mentioned in the article because I didn't look. I would guess that some conservative Hindus probably quoted as saying that this movement is bad. That would be my guess given New Yorker. Okay? So Let's just take two hands because I think this is quite obvious. What do you see that's wrong with this coverage of topics? Anybody? Maybe somebody who hasn't spoken yet because I think this one's really obvious. Okay, Maitri, what do you see that's wrong here?
First of all, they don't have a clear Hindu perspective in any of the headlines, so I'm assuming that the only time they ever mention a Hindu is for the same purpose you mentioned by immediately saying in the next line, but most people disagree. But this is not how the West works. Also, the pictures, I know this wasn't really mentioned.
Yeah.
The pictures are kind of unrelated. Like, Tulsi Gabbard.
She's surfing.
Yeah.
That's Tulsi Gabbard surfing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, she has a lot more going for her than.
Fair point. Fair point. Anybody else? Sure, we'll go for Aman.
There are like out of all of those 9 headlines, there is this 2 headline which is like telling the person like there should be like terrorism in India, like the year of love jihad in India, and the other one is like why the war for Kashmir burns on. It's like it's telling the people like, oh, there is some problem with it. You should be proactive. You should do something, and that signifies out of the order, which is like implementing terror in the hearts of Indians. So
Right.
that's like
Right. So it is right. So they're saying that there's some meaningful war that needs to be fought in this headline. Okay, we have to move on. By the way, this is the New Yorker, and the examples that I'm going to give are going to get worse. So this is the best example that I have. Okay, second example. Can anybody recognize the outlet from the...
India Today? No?
No, it's not Yahoo. It's not CNN.
Wall Street Journal.
It's not Wall Street Journal. It's the Washington Post. Somebody said it. So all of these articles are by the same person. They're all by Annie Gowan. So we've already seen one headline by Ms. Gowan, which is here. This is the one we already analyzed, right? So the reason why I've included headlines only from Annie Gowan are because she was recently awarded the Ramnath Goenka Award for excellence in journalism for foreign correspondence in India. So all of these pieces are why she was given the award. These are the examples of excellence in journalism according to the people at the Indian Express who give out the Ramnath Goenka Awards, okay? This is what they consider excellence in covering India. This is what Indians consider excellence in covering India, okay?
One pattern I see is it's all about Hindu-Muslim. Like literally all this side I read, it's all about Hindu-Muslim. They're just trying to create that religious...
Right, so the only topics that are covered are Hindu-Muslim conflict. Yeah, go ahead.
On the night of elections, I was actually reading several of these articles and I almost believe them because it was well written, but it wasn't accurate.
Right, exactly. So the people who write these articles are smart people. They're people in academia, they're people who have very sophisticated ways of writing and very sophisticated ways of selling their ideas and their propaganda in a way, right? Okay, so this is pretty bad. This is not the worst. There's one example that's worse than this. I mean, look at this headline, straight out of the Nazi playbook. That's the last headline. It doesn't get much worse than that, but we're going to get worse, okay? So here's the last one. Here's the last one. Okay, so can anybody guess what this is? Which outlet is this? It's NPR. Very good. So I'm going to show you all the pieces about Hinduism that NPR has ever covered in the last 5 years on this slide, okay? So this is going to be it. And there's going to be one thing that comes up after this. Powerful group shaping the rise of Hindu nationalism. Nearly 27 years after Hindu mob destroyed a mosque, the scars in India remain deep. With Indian elections underway, the vote is also a referendum on Hindu nationalism. Very interesting that the only issue in this election is Hindu nationalism. Third woman enters sacred Hindu temple in southern India amid protests about Sabrimala. Cow dung soap. Cow dung soap is cleaning up in India. Indians are partying and praying. So you were talking about Ganesh Chaturthi. This is the headline for Ganesh Chaturthi. Indians are partying and praying for elephant-headed god Ganesh. So Ganesh is elephant-headed god.
That's the stereotype that no one's supposed to follow. Everyone knows that's not what you say.
Yeah.
Or you don't even just say good.
Partying and praying.
Partying and praying. Guys, it's going to get worse. Vigilantes in India protecting sacred cows, promoting a Hindu way of life. Vigilantes in India are promoting a Hindu way of life. Hindu way of life is going around and killing people. This is literally what this headline says. Literally what it says. Next. Indian state bans the slaughter, sale, and consumption of beef. This apparently happened in 2015. I'm not aware of this ever having happened. Holy goats, they're kind of a big deal in one Nepali town. So this is a story about holy goats being holy in one Nepali town.
But that's
I mean, that's interesting.
even though it's
Like,
Nepal,
that one.
even though it's Nepal, the connection is back to again back to Hinduism.
Yeah.
Back to Hinduism. The connection again goes back to Hindu Dharma of how backward and how violent and how oppressive it is. And how
Yeah.
bizarre.
So I also want to draw, the last one is dangers of dope smoking ascetics in Kathmandu. So again, another piece about Nepal. Ascetics in Hinduism are dope smoking people. Okay, that's what the implication is. Okay, so last thing about NPR. I hope this audio plays. So before every single piece that they did on the Indian elections, this audio played, and hopefully it plays. Yeah, it looks like it's gonna work.
Oh, do you want to plug it in?
Oh.
Voting is underway in India's national elections, and this week we're bringing you a series of stories about how India is redefining itself through its majority Hindu faith. Today, we take you to a holy place in northern India. It's where nearly 30 years ago, Hindu activists tore down a historic mosque. NPR's Lauren Freyer reports from Ayodhya.
Okay, so did anybody catch what she said at the beginning?
Reshaping.
Right, so what is reshaping?
Hindu majority.
Right, so Hindu majority faith. So the faith is what's reshaping India. And this is how Hindu faith is reshaping India. All of these things. No, I don't think she said reshaping. I think she said redefining. Redefining, which is even worse, right? Definition of Hinduism is all of these things.
And the worst context is whenever we talk about Ayodhya, like the Babri Masjid and
Yeah.
people.
That's from this story.
Forget that there was a temple in there in the first place. And it was
Yes. This story doesn't include anything. Yeah, Patrice.
So why is the Islamic perspective more accepted over the Hindu?
Yeah.
Why?
That's
why?
a basic.
That's it's hard also because like
Just in the media, like not in like individual households or just in the media. Is that like everyone who runs the media outlets? Is everyone Muslim and
they're not Muslim actually. They're not.
so why is there bias?
So I think part of the reason is that there's this conditioning to always think about conflict in terms of majority versus minority, and minorities always needing to be protected and given special privileges. So this is something that has come up from India through its constitution, that like minorities are given special privileges within the constitution, special protections. So people, even the original founders of India, thought about the idea that like the majority could, if it gained power, gain undue influence and attack the minority. So that was like a noble idea, that we're going to protect people who are in fewer numbers. But the result of that has been that people are bending over backwards to sort of give, people, even in the media, like undue influence to a certain perspective. And I think that's part of the, Kanchanji.
So, to answer, so first, that's a good point. But the bigger tragedy is that the people who are writing, they have a reason, they have a goal, and it's their ideological goal. Because if, as Nikhil represented yesterday, colonialism has happened and invasions happened and India is going through a transformation, India is trying to reclaim its own self, history and glory right now, and it so happened Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, is in the forefront of that movement, that we want to bring the history in the right light, and all these things are happening, and the tension of certain people, vested interest people, I would say, they don't want that to happen. So ideologically, leftists like the communists within India and here, there are many communists here and they're influencing media here also, they always said that it's Hinduism for which the Indian society is in bad shape, the caste and all this because of Hinduism. So they want to make sure to attack Hinduism again and again, and the longer term thing is, and some of them, I won't be surprised, are funded by missionary organizations, that I know the Times of India group is now funded by a Christian group from here and so.
Toilet paper.
Yeah. So anyway, so there are vested interests. It's not just someone wants to say something. There's a vested interest. There's a long history of same colonialism in a different package is coming back, and media happens to be the tool right now.
Yeah. I'm not anti-Muslim or anything.
Yeah.
I'm just like I guess like the same in Gaza. So what if all of a sudden the Muslim minority were the Muslim had Kashmir or had everything, and what would the media look like then? Would it be
exactly
the Hinduism? The Hindus would they still be bashed like that? Or,
yeah. So very good point. In Kashmir, in case you don't know, Kashmir is a place of Shaivism and a lot of Hindu heritage and culture.
So this ashram is actually Kashmiri Shaiva.
Right. So the Hindus, Kashmiri Hindus, were driven out forcefully from there are very few Hindus left in Kashmir. Their stories are never published by the same media. It is only when there's a violence in Kashmir today. So it's a sympathy towards your enemy. So the Hindus are enemies to them, to the communists and to the colonialists. That colonialists and missionaries, they want to convert India. The communists, they don't want India to remain Hindu. So it's basically, they look at as these are all enemies of their goal. So they want to put in whatever word. Not everybody, I'm saying. Many of them are ignorant, simple ignorant.
Yeah.
They don't do study.
Yeah.
But I think many of them has a vested interest in doing so, and they're backed by sources unknown.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. I know there's people who want to participate here, but we should keep going. I don't want to pull a Nikunjbhai from yesterday. I want to give us some time. And also, like, I know that some people are having like emotional reactions to this kind of stuff, right? Like anger, confusion, all those things are going through our heads. So think about how you can, with the questions we're asking, use it, and also think about how you can articulate that confusion and articulate that anger in a way that doesn't alienate other people, right? That's very important. Okay, number 5, how does the author, if he does or she does, back up her assertions? Are assumptions and implicit biases passed off as facts or obvious truths in the piece? So sometimes people just state things that are never backed up, and it becomes like a snowball from there, right? So there's some assumption the author makes, it's stated as if it's a fact, when in fact it's not, and it's contested. And then it creates huge problems, right? Because the reader just thinks of it as a fact and doesn't ever question the author. Does the author of the article make any effort to justify the use of adjectives or qualifiers used, right? So if you say violent, if you say extremist, if you say, what's the right word? Angry, stuff like that. Mobs, that's a qualifier that's used a lot. Are you making any justification for why that qualifier is used? Anti-women, anti-Dalit, like, are those qualifiers ever actually explained in the article? That's an important question that we should ask. How much of the author's assertions are based on objective facts, and how much of the assertions are based on subjective labeling? So when we analyze the quality of the argument, are people just being labeled? And that's why we're thinking of the people in that way, that the author just said that, this person was violent, or that this group of people did this, and that's what it is? Or are there objective facts that are actually presented to back up the claims that are being made, right? So labeling, which is just like saying that, I have to pick on somebody. Okay, I'm just saying, like, Rohan's stupid. Like Rohan's stupid. Like, you should leave. You're stupid. You're not qualified, right? Like, that's very mean, and of course, and it's not justified or backed up in any way, right? But people use that type of language when they're talking about certain groups of people all the time, and it's very unfortunate. It doesn't just happen to Hindus, by the way. So that's something that we should, be attentive to when we analyze any type of media. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Like you said, like Rohan is stupid or something. So the one way they can interpret is like they can end with a question that is Rohan stupid. They will imply he is, but like in the way he is.
Yeah.
Make it ambiguous.
Yeah.
The message is clear.
Yeah. Like, why does that question even arise in your mind? Is the thing, right? Okay, so this is an example that I took from The Guardian from yesterday, but I think we might run out of time, and I wanted to go do some other things, so we're going to skip it. If you're interested, I can give you this presentation so you can look at this and go through it yourself. Okay? Okay. Powerful use of labeling, right? So we're talking about whether the argument is actually making the argument or just labeling people. So this is again from media professor at the University of San Francisco, Vamsi Jaluri's analysis. And we should think about what are the labels that are being used here conveying about our community. So these are all, this is from the coverage of the Indian elections. And we're specifically looking at not how a party is being labeled, but how modifiers appear around the words Hindu, okay? Conservative Hindu movement, make India a Hindu state. Hindu lynch mobs began to pop up. Cow is sacred animal under Hinduism. Extremist Hindu priorities. Mystical river from Hindu scriptures. If fascism came to India, it would be as majoritarian Hindu communalism. Modi wore a green and saffron scarf, and saffron is a holy color in Hinduism. Note from Vamsi Jaluri, doesn't add that green is a color for Muslims, right? So if you're saying that saffron is a Hindu color and he was wearing a green and saffron scarf, why aren't you saying anything about the color green and what it signifies? Hindu golden age nostalgia. So similarly, things used here: firebrand, Hindu ascetic, Hindus dwarf minority. What else is from here? I think it's mostly the same thing. Hindu nationalist killed Gandhi. Hindu nationalist, India for Hindus, model like Israel or Turkey. Hindu nationalist, Hindu nationalist. So Hindu nationalist is used in almost all of the articles repeatedly, especially in this NPR article. Again, NPR is probably the worst outlet when it comes to coverage of Hinduism. Yeah.
Just a quick point on this, and it's something that people in this room may have already faced or potentially will face. People will come and ask you, are you a nationalist? Are you a Hindu nationalist? And things like that.
Yeah.
So just think about how you would respond to that.
Which is a very weird question to ask someone who lives in America and who's an American citizen or was even born in America, right? So think about if you went to like your Muslim friend and you asked them like, are you a Muslim nationalist? Because let's say you're like from like your parents are from Pakistan, yeah, or your Jewish friend, like, are you a Zionist? Yeah. Right? It would be offensive. It should be offensive. Okay. Tens of millions of Hindus took dip in Kumbh. Right-wing Hindu leader, reference to Deen Dayal Upadhyay. Hindu nationalist, Hindu program site, Hindu nationalism, Hindu nationalist, right-wing Hindu nationalism, Hindu-centric, Hindu Muslim, priest politician, most vocal Hindu nationalist. So these are all the words that are being used in these articles with reference to Hinduism. So there's almost no other thing. One example that I do want to mention is this here. So this is from the Indian Science Congress. So it says, outcry after Hindu researchers dismissed Einstein at conference and said ancient Hindu gods invented planes. So what is the implication here? The people who debunked Einstein's theories were Hindu researchers. They weren't Hindu. Now they're not Hindu nationalists anymore. Now they're not extremists. Now they're just Hindus. Yeah. Interesting, right? Even though like people who are in the sciences here in the US, a lot of them are Hindus, right? Think about 38% of doctors in the US are South Asians. Think about how many Hindus are doing research in computer science, right? So those people are doing cutting edge research, but Hindu researchers in India are being reduced down to people who believe that ancient Hindu gods have invented planes, according to NPR. So similarly, we can go through the same thing for the BBC, but I just want to show you the power of labels and how labels are used with reference to people.
I think so. The labeling, like, it depends on which what media is it and which country it's published in. Mm-hmm. For example, if it's in India and you use that kind of statement, it will get pressed because people won't like it. But if you use it in USA,
no, I don't agree.
I'm just saying people, like, the news always want to sell the newspaper. So I think it's like
we're gonna see some examples from India in a second, and I think they're actually worse than this.
So I
feel like I'm not saying all writers are innocent, but I feel a lot of these writers are really innocent and stupid in that they interchange Indian and Hindu all the time. Like, I feel like these people shouldn't be allowed to publish. And you know what makes me even more mad? Here I am, like a legit researcher researching on useful things. Like, I'm not saying it's not useful, but I feel like scientific things.
Yeah.
and like I'm having such a hard, like my thing's written in perfect English, such a hard time publishing stuff like this. But like things that'll like generate some type of passion, like, and even if it's not written properly, like everyone's out to publish it, like just to like create drama. Like it's just amazing.
Yeah.
And it's bad. It's really bad.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah, Rohan.
I think we have to be careful. I know that like we're all also like very emotional right now. I completely understand that.
Yeah.
And I don't think I really disagree with like anything I said so far. But when it comes to like we shouldn't or we should like let people do things, I remember like one rule of thumb that's really served me well is that whatever someone's arguing, if that was applied to the person who's arguing it, like if it was reversed, and the person shouldn't be able to complain. So like if you say like they shouldn't be allowed to publish because they're saying things that are false, if someone flips that around and says you can't publish because like what you're saying is false because I think it's false, it wouldn't like exactly work.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we should be telling people what they can and can't publish. I think we should be questioning these people more actively and asking them, you know, there's certain standards in journalism that you should be applying across the board. And all I'm arguing in this presentation, and I hope everybody's taking that away also, that we're not deviating from that topic, is that those standards aren't applied to Hinduism in the way that they are to others. And there's obviously deviations in every community's case, but you know, they might be the exception for other communities, and for our case, they're the rule. And so now that we've discussed this enough, I want to just have one piece of writing that we can all look at together, which is from an academic context. So this is from a UC Berkeley press release about a UC Berkeley professor's work. So maybe we can just go around and popcorn read this. So would someone like to volunteer to read the first 4 paragraphs? Yeah, go ahead, Simran.
Caste and untouchability in India have puzzled social historians for centuries. Why are millions of Indians deemed untouchable? Can a person change his or her caste? Why is cleanliness so prized, and yet cow dung used as a cleansing agent? Prominent folklorist Alan Dundes, a professor of anthropology and folklore at the University of California at Berkeley, offers a unique Freudian analysis of caste and untouchability in his new book, Two Tales, a Sparrow and Crow. Although there are hundreds of books on the subject, Dundes says no one has looked at it from a psychoanalytic point of view. There's a lot of Freud bashing going on in our country and a lot of resistance in other parts of the world to Freudian and Western theories, he said. But I think I offer a plausible, coherent explanation. Certain Indian child-rearing techniques for the pattern that underlies caste and untouchability.
Okay, so he says specifically that he's going to offer a plausible and coherent explanation using Freudian theory. So let's see if we find his explanations plausible or coherent. So do you want to popcorn somebody else?
The book first reviews the caste system, a rigid hierarchical structure of social inequality in which one's rank is ascribed at birth. Castes are ranked on the basis of one's pollution, work-related contact with life processes such as birth and death, and life substances such as feces and blood. The greater one's purity or lack of contact with pollution, the higher one's rank. Contact with a person of a lower caste can negatively alter one's purity and require, in some cases, a ritual procedure, such as bathing or changing clothes. A more serious defiling act can result in expulsion from one's caste. Intermarriage between castes is strongly discouraged. Many anthropologists and specialists on India have remarked on the critical importance of pollution to the caste system. Sid Dundes? It has been called the chief principle upon which the entire caste system depends. In the book, he uses 2 Indian folktales, one about a crow who unsuccessfully tries to eat communally with a sparrow. Associated with feces and pollution and unable to wash itself clean, the crow eventually dies while doing chores to try and win acceptance from other animals.
Okay, who do you want to popcorn?
Cheese.
Okay. A crow can never be clean enough to share a meal with a sparrow, said Dundes. Any more than an untouchable can ever be clean enough to share a meal with a Brahmin. The importance of India's pollution complex no longer is debated, but Dundes provides a fresh look at what he calls unconscious underlying folk belief complex, which has led to untouchability. In the book, he uses 2 Indian folk tales, one about a crow who unsuccessfully tries to eat communally with a sparrow. Associated with feces and pollution and unable to wash itself clean, The crow eventually died while doing chores to try to win acceptance from other animals. Did I read that? Sorry.
That's right.
The research found that caste and untouchability have roots in the human body. The top cleanest caste, the Brahmins, supposedly were born from head of the creator, while the bottom, dirtiest caste, the untouchables, came from the feet or anus. It is the persistent, obsessive fear that the top, clean mouth might be contaminated or defiled from the bottom, he said, that underlies and permeates the entire caste system. This explains why a higher caste cannot accept food from the hands of a lower caste for fear of contamination. Feet are dirty because they are in contact with the outside ground where feces might lurk.
Okay. Now, does somebody want to just finish the article off? Anybody? We're at Dundee said he found.
Dundee said he found?
Yeah.
Okay, Dundee said he found other clues to the roots of the pollution complex while examining toilet training practices in India. Indian parents give their children a mixed message during their early years, he said, that is closely related to the pollution complex. Begun much earlier than in the West, toilet training starts in India when a child is 3 months old. A very lenient approach is used where children can eliminate wherever they wish and are cleaned up by a doting mother. However, at age 5, the child's toilet training ends with a traumatic crackdown in which the previously pampered child is expected to respond with absolute obedience and conformity to familial and social standards. The trauma arising from such a marked discontinuity could well result in a, I don't know how to pronounce that word.
Cathaxis, I think.
Okay, that. Or fixation on
Anally,
said Dundees. I believe there's a correlation between toilet training in India and the adult behavior as expressed in various manifestations of the pollution complex, he said. I would like to think that this insight might be of some help in encouraging reformers to take action against forms of caste prejudice and some of the evils of untouchability. Dundees recommends changing toilet training techniques by encouraging mothers to start toilet training later than 3 months and to minimize the traumatic crackdown at age 5. Ultimately, said Dundees, this is a problem Indians are going to have to solve for themselves. Dundees' book also includes discussions of the sacredness of the cow in India, the burning of widows, and also on the caste system and pollution complex among contemporary